All right. Good evening. I'd like to call the Glynn County Board of Education work session for April the 2nd to order. And I'll go ahead and turn it over to items of information with Dr. Cole.
All right, and we've got Mr. Holsey online as well. And I just want to thank all the staff that we've had the last few weeks. A lot's changed since we had our last board meeting. But I'm just very proud of the work and effort that's gone into the changes that we've done as a school system, and just been proud to be a part of this profession, and appreciate all the support we've gotten. So we will jump in first. We have Ms. Preston in here, and she's going to provide our financial update. And there's a lot of still unknowns. I'm sure she'll tell you this, but the state, as you know, legislative session ended about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and they had not passed the budget. So we are only going by the budget as we knew it before they went out. From what we're hearing, they may not come back in session until June. So we don't know what that looks like or how that's going to impact us, but we just don't know. So I'll turn over to Andrea for the rest of it.
So yeah, like Dr. Cole said, we're kind of moving forward with where they left it, even though, I have strong doubts as to whether or not they're probably going to leave the $1,000 increase for teachers intact. But yes, this is probably the craziest, even through the recession years, this is probably the craziest budget season I've ever gone through, because I feel like the only positive thing about COVID-19 is that we can probably be rest assured that we're headed for some financial difficulty within the next year. I mean, teachers' retirement rates will probably start going back up, even though we just had our first decrease planned for next year. Health insurance rates will probably be affected. There's a good chance that the state revenues are really bad, they'll reinstate the austerity reduction again. It's just crazy. So at least I think we have an opportunity to potentially plan for the worst ahead of time instead of being caught, with your pants down, so to speak. So anyway, so with that being said, the last time I got an update from the tax assessor, he gave me about a 2.5% increase in the digest, but as you know, that's only the top portion of the digest that we adopt every year, and there's other components that could decrease or increase. And historically, the last couple of years, even though we've had an increase in our property values, our digest overall has not increased in total as with the numbers that he's given us. So I've actually reduced the property tax value increase down to a 0%. Went down on the collection rate to 97.5, and I calculated a millage increase of 0.75, which generates almost $2.9 million. I kind of put a line item on the summary for the reinstatement of possibility to austerity, which I mentioned a minute ago. If the governor does go through with the $1,000 increase, we will see an increase in our FTE money based on the increase in the weights that he's doing, and that netted with a decrease in the local fair share, because the year that we're looking at, we had a slight increase in our digest, which will mean we'll have to pitch in more locally. So that's just a net increase of $1 million. The decrease in the teachers' retirement rates is 1.5 for next year. Step increases for certified is a little over 1, and step increases for non-certified is less than $500,000. A potential $1,000 increase to the state salary schedule for certified folks is a little over 1.3. And they had talked about a 5% increase for bus driver state pay and food service. So what we looked at is a $500 stipend, increase to the salary scale for all the other employees, which would cover a 5% increase if it stays in there for drivers and food service. So it's more than 5%. So we're also working on staffing, and it's still in progress. I'm trying to finalize some numbers on special ed. But the new positions you'll see are, a year ago, Risley Middle decided to follow suit with the other 3 middle schools and split reading and writing, and we added 2 teachers to do that at 1 grade level, and we're going to add 2 more for next year to do it for the next grade level, so that they will be on the same page as all the other middle schools. The RIF positions you see is basically due to a decrease in enrollment. Typically, when I do staffing in the spring, for elementary schools, it has always been our highest enrollment, fall versus spring. I use spring numbers because it's always higher at the elementary school in the spring. I don't know what happens. Kids don't show up in the fall or come late. I don't know, move into town. So historically, I've always used the spring enrollment numbers. And when I started looking at staffing this year, I was like, the class sizes that I was coming up with were like ridiculously low. And I'm like, what is going on? So I looked at enrollment. And since 2018, we have lost 342 enrollment students, elementary school students. So our population in our elementary schools is decreased. And that attributed to be able to attrition some positions through retirements. No actual reduction in force as far as firing. But so even with attritioning 12 positions at the elementary school, we have average class sizes of 20 at K, 20 at 1 first grade, 21 at second grade, 21 at third grade, 22 in fourth grade, and 22 in fifth grade. So those are still really good low class sizes. And I didn't do this in isolation. I went over, worked with Debbie Bennett and Sunky Lewis. And then the final thing is we felt like if the raise does pass through the state, that we would still leave in the increase for the extracurricular jobs, which is 196, almost 200,000. But this scenario that you see gets us down to only a budget deficit of a little over $150,000. Of course, that's based on a lot of assumptions. So even if the state doesn't pass the $1,000 and you cross off the two $1,000 and $500 increases and then take off your state, you still need that millage increase unless you want to adopt a budget with almost a $3 million budget deficit, which I just don't think that's a prudent thing to do, knowing that we are probably going to be going into a recession.
If you look at the top number, the ending balance that she shows is the $11,387,000 figure there, and obviously it will probably be higher, I'm assuming, a little bit, but we don't know that yet. So that's good. But going into next year, if we don't do this, I think, and get close as we can to a balanced budget, you know, we need to start building back, as y'all know, our fund balance because of what just happened through the lawsuit. So we feel like we've done our part by really scrubbing our numbers and doing what we can to be, you know, protect what we need to protect and not really let go anybody. But we probably need to do something about our numbers of class sizes anyway for the last couple of years, but we just left it. So we feel like we're doing a part, but we do feel like a millage increase, at least as a possibility, is something that we need just to get to that level and for our community. So this is, again, early numbers, but you know, this is where we're at, and I appreciate Andrea's work very hard, and we're still working through some of that, but we know what may be coming, and I think it's prudent for us to be mindful of that now instead of waiting and, you know, for the bad medicine later. So nothing drastic really here, but we feel like if we can do this now, it sets us up in a better position to handle this in the future instead of going through like, oh, there's no big deal, they're going to, you know, this is just going to hit us in a year or two. I think it's a good move on our part to do this. So anyway, any questions or comments? There may be some, I'm sure, about what we're looking at, but the hard part, as I just mentioned earlier, is we won't know numbers really until June. So we've got this. We probably will have a plan B if there's no raises. You heard I've heard the Speaker of the House of Georgia mention that there may not be any, but they would also not institute the tax cuts that they've talked about already. So those two may be going by the wayside for Georgians, but we don't know that yet. And so that's just kind of where we're at right now.
Hopefully they will find out a way to virtually adopt a FY21 budget, because school systems have to prepare salary schedules for the effective in July. And I mean, we're still paying people and have to move forward and need to know, okay, what are we doing here? Otherwise, we'll be paying people on old scales and then making adjustments, and a mess. And
most of you have done this a while. We usually have budget hearings. We usually do a finance committee like in April. There's just nothing for us to do until we hear more information. So we want to put this out to you where we're at right now, but we'll just kind of in a hold pattern. We can't do really much of anything until we get something from the state.
Well, how do we, speaking of the public hearings and all that kind of stuff, I mean, obviously that's not in effect.
They haven't relaxed any of those rules.
Yet.
So.
We don't,
yet.
I would assume if we continue this way, they'll have to, instead of having the 2 before, the June tentative budget.
Having several late June or something
Yeah,
like that.
it's going to be a rush, probably.
Yeah.
But we still are under the July 1.
Still July 1, still 2 weeks prior to adoption, you have to put it in the paper, to public,
As far as
all of
we know.
that's still there.
But you don't know the numbers.
Right. I mean, most budgets we go into, we don't know what our digest's gonna
Right.
be. But this is like, both sides of the coin. It's like,
Well, normally we know what the state's gonna do, we just don't know what the,
right. Yeah, so I won't get FTE allotments until, I don't know. Anyway.
well, we can always do budget amendments, I guess.
Right,
Yes.
absolutely.
Throughout the
Oh,
year.
absolutely, which
Yeah.
we do anyway.
And they may
Right.
be doing that too. We may have a budget in June from the state,
Right,
and
and
then
have
They
a different
change
one in
immediately
August.
in July.
they come back and do something different, so. I think they're waiting a little bit too to see how some of that comes in the next month or two.
I should have, the Senate Bill 486 deadline to file is, they hadn't talked about extending that, have they?
Not that I'm aware of.
The tax commissioner, I guess I need to ask him. That deadline is April the 15th, to be able to apply for Senate Bill 486. So I should have good tax assessor numbers, by our next meeting in May, but that's assuming they didn't extend that deadline, which I haven't seen.
Yeah, don't ask them until afterwards.
Yeah.
They didn't extend the property tax deadline.
Yeah, I doubt he's doing that.
Yeah. Any other questions about this? Again, it's very tentative, but I think it's as good as we can have it, and I appreciate all the work that's gone into that. Our next, so what I'm going to have Andrew do, well, actually, I'm going to do the financial efficiency rating. We got this, I'll do it fairly quickly, but this came about 3 or 4 weeks ago, and not that I'm tooting our horn too much, but it's been 2.5 stars, I think, since 2015, 2014. This is the first time we hit 3, and that really is primarily because our CCRPI average went over 80, and because of that, we're now at 3 stars. And the before this is the stuff we presented to you before about our budget priorities, but this slide right here shows what our overall rating, our per pupil expenditures, and then what it is by schools. Starting, obviously, the needs of the schools are a lot different because of what we do for title and different things and support we provide. And then
Right, because that's not just general fund money, that's everything that goes to
Right.
the school, federal and state and local.
And we presented this last year, but some of the reasons that go into the star rating of our district particularly is the fact that we have a lot of support on the SROs. We have registered nurses with our career academy. Again, I won't read all these to you, but we do a lot of things that are probably unique to Glynn that makes our rating what it is. But so those are the same factors they've been really for the last several years. But again, I just want to make sure we presented the new information about the 3 stars. That again, it's a half a star higher, so we'll take it. Any questions about that? All right, thank you. And so since Ms. Preston is in here, we're just going to jump on down to the proposed action items that she's going to present, which are 3 things. So the first one is, and this would be for your consideration after spring break, whether virtually or in person, we'll do it, but that will be her February 2020 financial report. So, Ms. Preston.
Right. So February, we only had one budget amendment that affected overall revenues and expenditures for general fund, and that was a reduction in our E-rate grant of $48,300. The year-to-date revenues are tracking very well. It's the same as last year, and they're 83.4% complete through the year. The tax receipts for February is a little over $1.6 million, and year-to-date expenses represent 61.5% of the budget. And we're 66.7% through the year, so again, we're saving money. If you understand that we practically only spent 61%, but we're 66% through the year. This is old news. For February, the sales tax collections for February were a little over 1.8 million, which was 9% higher than last year's February. Our March numbers, which we'll present later, were still good. They were 1.8, but the effect of this COVID should hit us, obviously, for the month of March collections, which we get in April. So we'll kind of get half a month idea at the end of April, and then in May we'll know the full effect of what's going on. So.
Any questions about the February financial report?
I guess I have a question, and it's a pure speculation at this point, but, I mean, being that we do have our buildings closed, do you think we'll see some savings from budget in
We'll
that
see
when we
some
wrap the year?
savings. You know, we still have the custodians working and the air is not turned off. So, I mean, we're still running air. Al can probably speak to as far as probably temperature and stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, we're going to have savings in a lot of different areas, but, and then the flip side is we're paying everybody their base salary. And I can tell you that every month we have people with time loss. Well, we're not gonna save money on that because we're paying everybody their full pay. But,
And we didn't say that earlier, but we are paying all of our employees all their full pay. We did long-term subs, even full pay
long-term
subs.
subs that had a job that
Right.
when this started, but any long-term sub that was supposed to come fill in for a teacher after this started, we
Right.
canceled those. But,
So I think we've been very lenient and very supportive of our employees to get through this. Obviously, a lot of people working very hard. All of our employees are on call, and they can be called in any time if they need to do something that's essential for our district. So we've had, we still have employees coming in. Obviously, our custodians are still coming in. Our principals are coming in on a pretty regular basis. We're coming in payroll. Her department, that would have been pretty critical if we couldn't have got that out. So really appreciate all the work from Andre's department to get
and
that
we're
done.
rotating, we're not.
We're
all here
rotating.
all the time.
So we're doing our best to keep
I am.
our distance. But a lot of things have to continue. We have an essential service and delivery food. I mean, how could I forget that? I mean, that's a big deal for our community.
Yeah.
Our nutrition people, you really gain, I already had it, I think, but the other people for the appreciation what our food nutrition department, Miss Daniel and her team are doing an outstanding job doing that. And so I can't thank them enough. And our principals are helping, serve, and our SROs. All those are, really important portions of our school district are continuing to go. And so just very proud of that. But again, we're paying everybody, and we will plan to pay. I'm not hearing that's always the case in other districts. From Susan was sharing a story about another district, it might only go a couple more months, but we have no thought of not doing that. So, but we're very fortunate in that regard. So we appreciate the board's support and Andre's support to get through that.
I know, I've talked to quite a few teachers that they are still working just
Yeah.
about harder now.
It's harder.
because it's
Well, you gotta
online.
think out of the box.
And they're thinking out of the box, they're delivering papers, they're, and so it's as close to business as usual without being in
Yeah,
brick and mortar.
we're just in a different
Right.
location.
You know,
Yeah,
So, folks out there are still working hard.
yeah.
Yeah.
Any question about the February financial? We'll go on to the next item, which is,
Can I
Yes.
chime in just for a second?
go ahead, sir.
It seems insignificant, really, given everything we're going through, but I mean, it might be interesting to look at. I imagine we'll have a huge cost savings in fuel.
Yeah,
I
fuel.
don't know what that would be. I'd be curious to see after this is all over what that looks like. I know we're not having to pay bus drivers to go on extracurricular stuff.
That's
and
true.
That probably is not a huge number, but there, like to Edie's point, there will be some things like that. I don't know about power and water and that sort of thing, but you probably won't see huge savings there. But fuel, especially, there may be some savings there we can realize.
Absolutely, that's a good point. And our overtime is definitely down.
Overtime,
We're not paying any
additional pay.
overtime. Of course, ball games, all that kind of overtime that builds up month to month. So that's thousands of dollars. So that is the good news. Hopefully that will go toward the ledger toward our fiscal year 20 when we get to the end of the year, but or this fiscal year, I should say. So
Well, on that note, not to keep belaboring the issue, but while you're here, talking about the revenues and lack of with the sports and I know that they're self-sufficient or self-financed, and then our food service as well. How is that going to work when next year rolls around and we don't have the income from the
Well,
revenues of ticket sales
And
for sporting events, and then also the actual food cost?
are you
You
just
know-
are you saying because we go
fortunately,
ahead?
our
I'm sorry.
money-making sports have already happened.
Right,
Yeah.
Most of these spring sports are losers.
lose money on, okay.
I mean, they don't make money.
Yeah.
Because you pay, that includes my son's senior soccer year, but you pay so much in referee fees,
And
you
overtime
don't
for
make them up at the
security,
gate
yeah.
receipts. So actually, it might not turn out too bad for athletics.
How about food service?
Food service is going to be interesting to see what the feds do, because we're only getting reimbursement for those meals that we're handing out now. but we're still paying staff all the same. Now, she does have a healthy fund balance, so I'm not personally worried about it. But if it goes into the next school year, that might be not good. So the feds, I'm hoping that they will
Look at some average, what we were doing
come
before.
up with some kind of
something.
remedy, but anyway, she has a healthy fund balance for now.
All right, thank you. Our next,
Before you go,
Sure.
the mill, we kind of brushed over the mill rate.
Yep,
0.75, 1 and 1 1/4, I would think would be a couple of things we need to look at. And the board as a,
well, I was kind of going with the bottom line. I don't want to adopt a budget that has a surplus. I was just trying to get that to 0, so that's where I ended up with 0.75. So
I get
depending
that.
on the
You're-
other
you're-
components,
I'm
That-
just
might change.
worried about the 11, getting the 11 back to 20 is my,
But we are saving money now, so, and we'll start the year with a higher actual fund balance, maybe 1 to 2, I'm not sure yet. But, I know,
but I'm just trying to say it as openly as possible that it's something that we need to look at. We need to make the hard decision on that soon, which is supporting what you're saying, that we
I
might
agree.
need to move it, and the rest of the board to know that it's just not something that's gonna go away.
so, during the recession, we left the millage rate the same for 6 years, and we raised it once in 2014, and then immediately rolled it back less than 0.07, and then we've left it the same for 6 years. So, 12 years span of consistent millage rates is pretty good.
and the digest not growing is really hurting us.
As well as being able to shell up $11 million in mitigation.
So this will be on the board for your approval or consideration on that Tuesday following the break. The next item Ms. Preston has is
Yeah.
a student and faculty computer refresh for 2020.
Yes, so I had got Dr. Cole to do an emergency purchase of that. We were up for a refresh with, the schools are listed there.
Yeah, Altama, Burroughs, Millette, Greer, Golden Isles, Goodyear, Morningstar, Sterling, and Transportation.
And the goal was to get this emergency purchase approved and get the order out immediately, because we had a vendor that had 11,000 Chromebooks, and by the time we did it, they were gone. So they're on back order. But Dell is actually shipped for PCs and, stationary stuff. We did Dell for stationary stuff, and CDW, both statewide contract vendors for the Chromebooks. But unfortunately, we were hoping to get Chromebooks in, but immediately.
One thing I noticed in the cover letter that you're just passing by, it says that 398 Dell mini towers.
Yeah.
But when you look down in it, I think it looks like it's just 39.
Look down where.
Look to the next page. Keep going. See right there, the top line where it starts the pricing?
It does say that.
39 right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I didn't know if they've
'Cause up here it's-
misquoted or
like
if it
there's
was a
a-
typo in the letter. I didn't know.
I don't know, I'll have to ask Bob.
Yeah.
But that's the actual invoice.
That's got to be, if that's, well, I have to,
They break out some of that stuff, so you might be right, we may have did a typo. on
we'll
that.
check into that.
Because the others, there's the monitors and
Right.
then the other, is that 842?
842.
842 is
That's
these
matches.
many things that we buy.
And if you keep going down there, I mean, you don't have to go down, but if you're looking further down, it looks more like an invoice, and that does still show 39.
So maybe it was a typo with the 398 maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. One thing that I had talked to Dr. Cole about is teacher technology. And our standard has been for desktops, and I'd like to really see that evaluated. I've been to 2 technology committee meetings, and we've really mostly talked about students. So when you look at the desktops with the monitor, they're $600 to $625 each, and there's some laptops in there. I don't really know who those are designated for, and they're more like $520 each. So we're spending more on the desktops, and for some uses, they might not be as
And we're actually moving away
Valuable.
from laptops and going to Chromebooks.
Right, right. So, but I just guess I mean the difference between stationary and
Yeah.
not, and how they can be
And,
best used.
and a lot of that has to do with the makeup of the classroom as it exists as far as the technology in there.
Right, with the smart
Having a
boards, we have to
station-
have it.
Yes.
Yes.
So what we've done with this refresh and the one last year, every classroom has 4 to 5 Chromebooks that a teacher can take home with them
Right.
at any time. So
Right.
they all have access to a Chromebook.
Right, and I understand it was kind of too late to
I
figure it
think the
out
way
for
we
this
configure our
one.
rooms is going to change. We're doing a lot of hard wiring, which, that's
Right.
kind of passé now. But because a lot of the new smart boards we have their own computer in the back, you could actually use that.
The Promethean.
Promethean boards that we have, smart boards. So I think it's just
But we
starting
don't
to look.
have those everywhere.
Not right. So we're going to have this is going to be slow, a little bit of an evolution, but I do agree with Ms. Sams that as we go forward and need refreshes, I think we need to look more and more about how we're meeting the needs of the teachers and what they need. A lot of them aren't taking stuff back home, but if they need to, they do have access to the Chromebook. But if that would be another laptop or something that they could use in their classroom, certainly that if that's a benefit to them, then it's something we need to look at.
So this emergency purchase is basically for next year?
It is, but we wanted to try and get the order
Right.
immediately because
Yeah.
Dell was telling us they were back ordered, their factory was,
Because at the time we found out about it, it sounded like there were
And-
quite a few students that didn't have Chromebooks, and then.
We were thinking that if we got them early, it might
Yeah,
have
that
helped
we
some of
could
that.
use
We could
these.
have, but
Now, my thought process was that some of these students hadn't been taught on it, and a lot of abuse could happen to it.
Yeah.
If they're taken home and they're not.
we've
coming
made the
back.
decision we've gone through all of our inventories. A lot of computers bought by federal money we cannot send home, but we have sent computers home. We're trying, obviously, it's a big gap when you've got
Until
some
they're
kids.
properly trained on it.
Right.
That's.
Oh, they know technology
Oh,
better than we do.
Yeah.
They know.
We did a good job with instructions, I think, and provided support numbers. And so hopefully they've used it in class, so it won't be this big, surprise for
I
some of
just
that as
didn't
well.
want to have to wait till
Right,
the
right.
Tuesday after spring break to get this approved.
Yeah, this is in our budget. This was nothing new, so.
Yeah.
Any questions about this? So this is for 1,000,003.
Go back up.
Am I saying that right?
It still shows the same total, is that what you're
Yeah.
looking for?
The total's the same, so
You know
it's-
what? This
That's-
isn't the right attachment, because we have 2 orders, one
Oh.
going to Dale and one going to CDW.
Okay. Is there
And
something at
this
the bottom?
This was the original one, so Bob never sent the updated
Okay.
attachment.
We'll send that to you tomorrow so that you have that, and we'll make sure to post that on our
This,
assembly. as
that
well.
was the original one when we were getting everything from Dell.
And for clarification, this was already in the budget.
Yes.
Yes,
This is not
this is
new.
the annual refresh, it's not new. So I need to get the updated attachment for that,
Okay.
sorry.
All right. And the last item I think Ms. Preston has is the Microsoft Enrollment for Education subscription, and I will blow this up too.
And that's our annual subscription for,
$125,499.76. If I'm saying that right.
our Microsoft Windows operating system agreement.
It's like another annual year for that.
Is that in line with what we were expecting? it to be?
Yes, yeah. That's in his technology budget.
So that was for your consideration on that Tuesday. We come back from the break. Any questions about this renewal for Microsoft? I think that's all the items I had from Ms. Preston. Any other questions for her before we let her go? All right. Thank you, Ms. Preston, for everything. You can tag Paul. He is next.
Actually, football. Oh, thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
$125,000 for Microsoft.
There.
You wonder about Bill Gates. I wonder he doesn't miss a meal.
Yeah, that's just the license.
That's just a license.
It's not any hardware.
We're one thing in your hand.
And
I'll let you use it, but you're gonna pay me.
one of the,
Think about what Gwinnett County-
I think Paul's been in contact with you a little bit about this mending or editing this policy, so I'll give it to him on that.
Yes, good afternoon. The current DJE policy, purchasing policy we have with the district, just a few updates to the policy in terms of changing of the cost. allowances or limitations on a number of the areas. I, of course, discussed it with Mr. Madala, and I sent out the emails to you as well. I'll be happy to go through that if you'd like me to. Or you, okay. The first change was on our current policy basically has a limit of $30,000 on multi-year purchases which require board approval. We'd like that to be changed to $40,000, of course. Also, this is in line with districts of our size as well, in speaking with Mrs. Preston about this. The second one is, of course, our current limit of $30,000 for the superintendent and assistant superintendent of finances to approve multi-year purchases. To move that to $40,000, make that $40,000. Award recommendations number 3 for purchases in excess of $40,000, which require board approval. Our current amount is $30,000, and there are some exceptions, of course, which are listed there as well. Number 4, verbal and written quotations obtained in open market purchases over $10,000. The current policy, the limit is $3,500, so that would put us, give us a little more leeway there. Number 5, open market bids over $10,000 must be written and submitted via fax, UPS, and so forth. That limit in our current policy is $7,500. We're asking that that be changed to $10,000. All purchases with an estimated cost of up to $10,000 excluded from the bid requirement. This is currently in our policy $3,500, so moving it to $10,000. And all purchases with an estimated total of $40,000 require for the approval of the board, or more require the approval of the board. Our current amount is $30,000. So a few changes on this policy, but it would give it would give us the ability to operate a little bit more fluidly with making certain purchases, and again, bringing us in line with what we currently see in other districts our size.
So the reasoning is efficiency of purchasing?
Efficiency, as well as just changes, and of course, cost of living and the changes in terms of being able to do business and how we need to do business and make decisions regarding these certain items when it comes to our purchasing. When speaking with Mrs. Preston about it, she was just helps us to be able to make certain decisions a little bit easier, and we've had to change this a few times over the years, and I'm sure this is something
When I first
that will
started, it was
continue.
10,000.
Yeah, we're going to continue to
Couldn't do
make
anything
these
without
changes.
anything above 10,000 the board had to approve, so it was like constantly something, so.
I just think one thing for us to consider is we're about to head into a hard time and trying to keep a balanced budget. I don't know that we want to be upping our approval limits at that point, but I don't know, that was my initial thought on that. Unless
It
there was
started
some
before all of this started. So
substantial,
he started on this, the
Right.
reason it's now, it was
Yeah.
started a while back.
Right. I just think we've got to consider where we might be headed when we think about this, so.
And that's good feedback. This is not to be voted on. This would be put on the table
Put on
for
the table for
Right.
next year.
30 days, so
Yeah,
just for y'all's
things will be
consideration. Might be a lot
totally
different.
different.
You might have a whole different take on this in
Yeah.
a month.
We can keep it on the table for an extended amount of time.
We can. I mean, there's no big thing pushing us to this, but this is something we reviewed, and like Mr. McKenzie said, every few years you kind of look at that because of inflationary reasons. You bump it up a little bit, but again, there's no burning desire to have to do this. So something we can definitely put on the table for as long as y'all would like to consider it. So, any questions from Paul on that, Mr. McKenzie? Thank you, Mr. McKenzie. You can
Thank you,
tag.
sir.
Thank you. You can tag Ms.
Okay,
Bennett.
no problem. Thank you.
And now we're going to start some of we're going to go down the COVID-19 update by department. So Ms. Bennett will come in and talk about how that's impacted HR and how that's going. And if you have any questions.
How are y'all interviewing?
Going not doing it face-to-face. How about that? So let me just tell you kind of what's going on down in the HR department. We're just moving forward. This is our hiring season, so we're just sort of adjusting and doing, everything we're doing is virtual. We've had very little face-to-face. Sort of a big disappointment for us was our career fair, our career fair, recruitment fair. We were very excited because we were going to have it March 20th at the athletic facility. And just really proud to have that facility and to be able to host it there. But it was scheduled for March 20th. So we knew that, immediately we needed to reschedule. So we are going to do it just completely virtually when we get back from spring break. So it'll be about mid-April. And I want to let you know that you will see tonight when we talk about the personnel report, we're just moving right on forward with resignations, retirements, hiring, and the best I can tell, we're just right on schedule where we have been in the past this time.
What do you do with people who don't understand any kind of virtual anything?
Well, and seriously, Mr. Madala, that is really a very good question. Everybody, and I don't mean this in any condescending way, everyone understands the telephone. So we always have that. If, these other little bit more, I guess, new approaches, the phone is still a great tool. So.
And earlier, we talked about essential services for district. Certainly HR and continuing to do what they're doing is one of those, and greatly appreciate all that Ms. Bennett and her group and team is doing, so thank you.
Yeah, and this is certainly a COVID update as well. As of just a little while ago, we had gotten 18 unemployment requests. We are not filing them. They are coming to us. So we're working on that as well. And we anticipate that over the next few weeks, those will continue to probably increase in number. So.
If I'm not mistaken, it would be better for, I'm just going to say, some people in some positions to file for unemployment versus continue your employment, even getting paid. I read that somewhere that there's some issues with that.
But as long as we haven't laid them off, then they're not eligible. Even our subs, because they're on call, really aren't eligible. So most of these may not be ones that, unless we've let them go because we're laying them off, they should be eligible for unemployment. So that might preclude some of that. But I've heard that same argument where some people are better off just getting laid off because they can make more than they were making, maybe in a week-to-week basis doing whatever they were doing. But
Yeah.
I feel like we need to do our part. If we have the resources to continue to pay our employees, we don't need to continue to flood the market and take some of those other resources away from unemployment from people who actually do need it.
I mean, we're the biggest employer in Glynn by far. So us continue to pay certainly helps support this county in a way that nobody else can do. And so us keeping that going at least through all this is a bridge to hopefully out of this. So. Thank you, Ms. Bennett. I think
Something to watch is what it is.
Yeah.
I will tell you, there is a specific question on the unemployment form that says, have you been working with a school system? A school system, a higher education, a private school system, and so that we've had to go through that.
Yeah.
Remember on the bottom of taxes, have you made any money legally or illegally? I mean, it's arbitrary.
I will say that if we're considering doing anything like that, there is still that
Right.
out there.
Yeah, that's good to hear that.
Thank you, Ms. Bennett.
Yes.
All right, Dr. Whitehead is next. So she's going to give us an update about how this is impacting assessment and.
So as you can imagine, this is having quite an impact on assessment for us this year. The State Department requested several waivers from the U.S. Department of Ed related to accountability in particular to be able to waive all of the assessments, and that permission was granted this week. So they've been funneling down to us what that means as far as accountability and other pieces here. So Officially, all spring assessments in Georgia have been canceled for the remainder of the year to include the spring end of grade and end of course assessments. You may see information where the statewide passing score was waived. It wasn't that that whole rule was waived, it was the portion of that rule that dealt specifically with a percentage of the EOC score counting in a final grade average. Locally for us, that's 30%. In the state rule, it requires 20% of the final grade rest on that grade conversion from end of course. So that part had to be waived because we're not giving the assessment. And then it's up to local districts to determine what that grade will look like without the 30% included in that. And so I know Mrs. Lewis will be following me, and she's been working with the schools on what that grading will look like for sure. Our alternate assessment for our students in our special ed programming is going aside this year as well. G-Kids is our measure for kindergarten, where our teachers continually update throughout the year. They started in the fall, and they run all the way through the year, updating how kindergarten students have done on standards and their achievement levels. That is not a requirement for the rest of the year, but in Glynn County, we actually use the G-Kids report as a kindergarten report card. And so it remains open, and teachers can still continue to update that data so that will be available for kindergarten through the remainder of the year. End of pathway assessments were on hold, waiting to see if we resumed, which of course we learned yesterday we will not come back to in-person instruction, so that students that have completed those pathways that were looking to get certification to include receiving college credit for the completion of an end of pathway. We're waiting to find out if they're going to have any kind of allowability in the fall for those students to test when our other students test. In particular, we have some students that take the early childhood pathway at Brunswick High, and those students are then afforded credit at the college level for having completed those courses at Brunswick High.
One quick question about that. What about, like, say, if you're a senior, would you end up, and they allow you to retake it in the fall, they would have to come back to take it, or?
They would, and what we were discussing, as a matter of fact, we had a discussion yesterday with the high school principals and their assistant principals for instruction, is that because they wouldn't be going right into that type of, they'll still start college with those core classes that everybody has to take, so they wouldn't be going into those content area courses, and that's what they get credit for, is like the intro to education coursework.
Right.
They would get credit for that in that particular scenario. We'll be waiting for information. I had an opportunity today to participate in a webinar with the Assessment and Accountability Division at the Georgia Department of Education, and they even said, we're still, we're trying to get through spring with all of these changes, and then we're trying to look ahead and see what the ultimate impact is as we move into next year, which is what, I think we're all in that situation. So we just want to try to continue to let students know that, we're trying to look out for what we can do to help them and not let this pandemic have an ultimate impact on their future educational careers particularly. The interesting part is that this is waived for spring, for end of course, and that counting in the grade. There have already been questions, well, what if I took a fall semester class and I took an end of course and then I took the test and it had to count 30% of my grade, where people in the spring took the same exact course and now they're not going to have that. And the state has said this is not waived for fall semester. It's only waived for spring. And then at this point in time, the summer main window for EOC is still on the schedule. They said, of course, that could change at any day when we know that we would still possibly be precluded from coming back to in-person instruction. But if the opportunity arises in the summer, students that are taking summer school courses for initial credit could do that if we're able to bring classes back into session, and then the EOC would be offered in the summer for those students. But it would not be an opportunity to try to back up and catch up kids from spring. Spring is over and done for end of course and end of grade. So even if we have opportunities to offer summer school, there will not be state testing for middle and elementary school. even at a summer school opportunity. Our access testing for our English language students, we happened to complete that the week before most of this impact started to come across the state. So those scores will be reported. We will get that information back. And it may actually become very useful for our schools to know, because they tested really and truly immediately before we were getting out of school for the closures. It may provide a really good baseline to be able to see if there was very much regression for that subgroup of students, so that we know what we need to go back and help remediate in their language acquisition skills when we return. So, but that data we learned today is still on schedule, and right now we're scheduled to get the digital reports for that the first week of May. So we'll see where that stands. All of the national exams obviously aren't under the auspices of the Georgia Department of Education or even USED, but each of those individual entities continue to reschedule their assessments. Right now, the first opportunity that is a first possible date for SAT is the first Saturday in June, and the ACT right now, the first possible date is June 13th, but both of those websites indicate that could change again at any time. College Board did reformat the advanced placement tests, so our students that have been in AP will still take the AP exam, but it will be very different. It's designed, they've reformatted the assessment so that it's designed to be at home and online, and to be completed in about a 45-minute session, and there will be all open response items on the test. The other accommodation that they've made for that exam is that they will not include questions on the exam that would have been traditionally taught in March and April leading into the May exams. So they've removed content and reformatted the entire assessment and made it available for students to test at home. So
That's kind of interesting.
it's a very,
When you're taking
very
it,
different.
The AP is a validator, that's its whole purpose.
Yes.
To validate your skills and whatever. That's good. And
Yes.
say, oh, well, the last 2 months we'll just not question
Because,
but
you know,
validate you on. That's good.
I think they don't want to penalize any student that wouldn't have had access to the same level of instruction, whether it be because of technology barriers or just access in general. So that seems to be the premise behind it. But again, that's a College Board decision, and but do want to make sure that our students are aware that that's still out there.
I think, were they to release new details or
Yes.
additional details today, maybe?
I think by tomorrow, yes.
Oh, tomorrow?
Yes.
I'm one day off, yes.
Yes.
And to the reduced content, they're like telling the kids what units they're gonna cover.
Yes.
So like, I only know this because Parker's
Yeah.
taking some, so it'll say, if there were, for instance, environmental science, if there were 9 units, we're only gonna test units 1 to 7, or 1 to 6, or whatever they think could be completed in that time period. So the children kinda know what's not gonna be tested, which is some of the stuff they may be going over now, but.
Are they telling them to put their book in a closet somewhere and not look at it at the house, or?
Well, they're open format.
It's open.
Yes.
It's not
Say it.
multiple choice, so
Yes.
if it comes right out of the textbook, they're gonna probably know that.
But you have to read the textbook to know that.
You gotta be able to find it in the textbook and still make it in the 45 minutes.
Yeah, that's probably
Yeah.
part of the key. And I don't know whether they've got any kind of originality screening that they'll run the responses through.
Yeah.
But, that's always a potential as well.
Well, they typically do open format as part of their regular testing, so I think they have measures in place probably for that.
So those are definitely changes. And as a result of that, many, I'm sure you've seen and heard that the colleges are also making adjustments based on this. And so in the university system of Georgia, SAT and ACT scores are not being included in the admission criteria at this point. They said this would not impact University of Georgia or Georgia Tech, because those schools already had full freshman classes by the time we got to the COVID response. And so it won't impact those two institutions, but for the remainder of the system, that's the case. Students may choose to include SAT and ACT if they had already taken the exams and want to use those scores on their admission applications. So that's information from there. And so, as a result of not having all of the assessments that we typically have that serve as measuring sticks for us, there will be no CCRPI for the 2019-20 year. And so that will be interesting. It's raising lots of questions about the targets that we had set that we should have met by this point, both for our strategic waiver and for making progress on CCRPI from year to year. And so the state is going to have to back up and figure out if those targets are reasonable to just carry over. Will there be any kind of increase in the targets for the following year when they can resume the calculations? So all of that's definitely in consideration right now. Some of the things that we do know that they are still going to capture as of today, they are still going to calculate graduation rate. So that will still be determined and reported on, so that'll be a piece that we will have moving forward. We don't know if there will be some components of the Climate Star rating that will continue to be measured. Attendance would not be included in that, where it has been in previous years, but potentially discipline and suspension rates and climate surveys that have been completed. We don't know if we're still going to get that information back in the form of some kind of rating that would come through. Again, because of having a lack of CCRPI to provide exit criteria for federally identified schools for assistance, you may recall we have Goodyear on the Promise School list. Those are all going to roll into next school year. So they will redevelop the exit criteria for the following year, but those schools will remain on the list for support, which should still also include some funding opportunities for those schools as well. Again, just still information coming. That's the information I have up to this point today after a 11 o'clock webinar. But I don't know if you have any questions about assessment or accountability on those notes.
Summer school, how are we gonna, when you take out all the assessments and everything, percentages and all that, what are we gonna do about summer school?
I think Ms. Lewis has got some ideas she can share with you when she comes in here about that, but that's a good question.
They're working through potential rubrics to make those determinations. So she can certainly update you in that regard. Just additional things, we, hopefully you're getting the communications. We're trying to keep the public aware of all the changes through One Call, social media, and the website. We have followed through to make sure that One Call and social media can be translated, and that's on a end user selection of settings, but that those pieces of information going out can be translated into different languages. And so we're trying to make sure that that word is out so that we know that we're communicating with all of our stakeholders and that doesn't present a barrier for them. And the last thing along the COVID updates is that we have made some adjustments to central registration over the past couple of weeks, just to keep in mind safety for the public and for our office personnel in central registration. And I'll be working with Mrs. Spence in the next couple of days to determine what that will look like for the remainder of the year. But most likely will entail appointments and time scheduled to make sure that we're keeping within the right limits and gives us an opportunity to provide some cleaning and things in between visits to that office. So those are the COVID updates that I have.
There is one proposed action item for
Yes.
Dr. Whitehead, and that's IC renewal for FY21, so I will bring that up and I'll let her tell you about that.
So student information system that we use is Infinite Campus. We not only use that for just general information about our students, it includes lots of opportunities for us to not only track data but keep up with our students in a variety of ways, which includes the transition we made this past year to what is known in Infinite Campus as SWARM, but it's a social worker module, so that our teachers can submit teacher concerns digitally, and we don't have to wait on paper copies being picked up or transferred to our social workers, so that we can try to be more timely with those responses. But the rates for Infinite Campus have remained at $6 per student, so that rate has not changed. So any increase that you would note between the previous year and this year would be due to the fall enrollment with FTE. And so the current quote for next year is for $112,032.10. And so we would be looking for an approval to renew that, to continue that service.
Any questions about that renewal for IC for next year or fiscal year?
Got a couple questions about, I don't know if it's going to be you or Ms. Lewis, but as far as the advancement, as far as the school, you know, with this different tests and stuff that we're not using, especially for like the identifiers for at-risk kids and whatnot, what do we have in place or what are we going to use for that, especially for like 3rd, 5th, and 8th?
That's something she'll talk about for
Okay.
sure.
Right.
Okay.
And we're working on that, but I mean, it's not all done, but that's
Yeah.
something we're definitely wrestling with
Right.
right now. And we'll hope to have some, information for everybody soon.
The ACT and SAT, are we still doing that at one school during the summer? Is that how we do it at high school?
Traditionally, we were using the Glynn Academy site, but Brunswick High has started offering it on site there, and so we'll just have to get an update on if they follow through with allowing them to do the next date, and then we'll certainly publicize and have it out there for everybody to know. They were allowing some transfer of fees from students who had registered for previous exams, but were unable to do that. And it's my understanding they should have received an email or something asking if they wanted to transfer that fee to the next available date. And they're continuing to work with everyone, but,
You actually had to register again and pay again, but then they refunded within like 3 days, the original.
But it is one school, right? We're doing it at one high school?
No.
both high
Okay.
schools. Mhm.
Okay.
If they allow us to.
Right, well, obviously, I meant,
Yeah.
but I was just wondering.
Yes.
There's a date in July too, I believe, at
There's-
least for ACT, so if we can't do it June, there may
Right.
be a
There'll be
date
other
in July.
Okay, thank you. I'll wait on Dr. Lewis.
Thank you so much,
Okay.
Dr.
All right.
Whitehead.
Thank you.
So now Ms. Lewis will come in for her update, which will be a lot of some of the questions that you've asked about that. Here she is.
All right, good evening.
Good evening.
So I'm going to give you an overview of what's been going on for distance learning. Hope everyone's staying safe and wash their hands.
Yes.
So to begin with, I want to say, and I know Dr. Cole has thanked everybody, but we want to also say thank you, Dr. Cole, because he's kept us updated like every minute, every second, exactly what's going on. So beginning March 4th is when actually he started saying, hey, we need to start putting our pencil to the paper to see what this may look like had we had to close our schools. So that's when we started the process, and from there we started talking with our leaders. And in fact, March 11th is when we sent out a district-wide survey to all our students, kindergarten through 12th grade. And it was a very simple survey. It says, do you have a device at home? Do you have internet service at home? So we got that kindergarten through 12th grade. We kind of put that on the shelf because we thought maybe we could use that later on. Sure enough, we did. On the 16th was our last day for our students. On that 13th, though, after talking with Dr. Cole, we made sure our elementary students for sure had at least 2 weeks of work home. So they took their work home on that Thursday. That following Monday, some students came, some were absent, but we didn't count them against them. But we sent additional work home, and our middle school and high school started really brainstorming on different avenues such as distance learning on the computer. By the 18th, we started having our virtual meetings with our instructional teams. That means all our instructional coaches, our SDIs, our ILTs, our content coordinators, and we always invited our principals. And we started meeting together, and we said, okay, we just sent home a lot of work to our kids. Now, what is this really going to look like if we have to extend it? So we started talking, and by this time, parents were calling. Some parents were going, oh my gosh, we can't get through this. Other parents were going, my kid's already through in 3 days. So it was everywhere, but that's okay. We did what we had to do right then and there. On the 18th, we began meeting with all elementary through high school, and the reason why we all met together virtually was because we need to hear, everybody needs to hear what we're all doing. So we kind of set the stage of our basic expectations, and they were, no child will be penalized at that time, and at that time, no new learning was occurring, it was just for review. And third was, you must make sure that if you sent work home that was virtual, online learning, that other children had a packet to take home, because you had to have that balance. After the 25th, we started breaking down according to grade bands. We met with high school from 2 o'clock, then we met with middle school at 2:45, elementary at 3:30. And then we started looking at the structure of what that learning looks like for that group of children. We decided that elementary would have 60 minutes a day of new learning. And I've got rough drafts, but I didn't give them out because, like I said, we're just hammering out the details and it's ever changing to make it better. But our elementary for new learning was 60 minutes a day. That doesn't mean they're not working on other things. It means that 60 minutes on Monday, the children know, or the parents know, I have math. On Tuesday, for 60 minutes, I'm going to have ELA or reading. So it's a schedule for our teachers and parents so they're not overloaded. We moved it to 90 minutes of new learning every day for middle school. And then we moved it to 120 minutes for high school. Again, this was not a one-person's decision. This decision was based on feedback from teachers, instructional coaches, and administrators. So we have, like this is a tentative distant learning timelines. This is from the high school, and they came up with their grading plan, their grading procedures, their participating grades, and they broke it down of what that looks like. We have one for middle school, and we have one for elementary. And tomorrow, hopefully, we'll be finalizing a lot of these things. But I just kind of wanted you to get a feel of what we're doing and where we're at. We also had to start talking about how work was going to be dropped off and how new learning was going to be picked up. So each school was very creative, but we made sure that we were following the rules of social distance. So there's boxes outside, there might be a filing cabinet outside, tubs outside, but it would be safe for all employees, that our teachers weren't having to hand them out individually. We also talked about how we could begin checking out Chromebooks. So on March 25th, we began the process and used the information that we collected on March 11th. And we started with those children first that said, I do not have a device and I do not have internet service. High school seniors had priority, and then we went for the rest of the high school, middle school, and now we're doing elementary. Out of 1,900 Chromebooks that we have on hand, approximately 830 have been checked out as of today. That doesn't mean that there's more children out there, because we're having a hard time getting a hold of some of them. Either the cell phone number's been changed, they're not answering their email, but there's all sorts of contacts that we were trying. Teacher tries first, whatever contact they have information. We try the social worker, communities and schools are trying to help, parent involvement workers are helping, neighbors, we're calling so-and-so, we know that person's a best friend. Hey, do you know if Marcus has a device? Yes or no? Because, you know, these children are very creative. They can use their Xbox to get online with. They can use all kinds of those devices. So, I mean, I think our teachers are learning too, that what kind of devices they can actually use for learning. So, again, but we had to remind everyone, no one gets penalized, because we do not know what that home situation looks like. And with that, I'm going to jump in to say that we've also put in a piece for an appeal process. So as we talk about how we're going to grade, what pieces we're going to grade, what we feel like is important for the next grade level, our high schools had a concern of possibly those students who were failing first semester. What are we going to do with those children who are just weren't giving it their all, they were checked out, they gave no interest? We still have to give them the benefit of doubt that if they had that second semester, they could, or they probably maybe would try to pass. So with that in mind, we give them the exact same assignments, and if they don't respond, we go through all the contact, we document all the ways we contact, and if we still say they need an incomplete, we give them one more piece, and that means we're going to put an appeals process in place. Because we don't know what happens in that house. We don't know if the lights were turned off. We don't know if someone passed away, if they had to move, if they got evicted. We just don't know. So we have an appeals process put in place so that child will have one more chance. And what that one more chance looks like possibly would be Edgenuity, possibly after school tutoring. I don't even know what summer school is going to look like. So we kind of got that on hold, but we're putting the bones together of that as well. So they're working really hard. Our high school admin met with Slade and Matt and Dr. Deppenhart, and we talked about what course completion looks like, and we had a lengthy discussion, and collaboratively we came to an agreement that we will stick with the 26 credits that are required for graduation. However, course completion could look very different in that we could modify our courses, but we would stick with the 26 credits, okay? So Val and Sal, that came up as well, because children are taking AP classes, children are taking classes at the college. We're really waiting to see how the college is going to grade first, and then that will give us a good idea of how we need to follow suit. Because again, we don't want to hurt the children, we want to be fair, we want to be equitable. We're touching base with other counties to see what they're doing. I think everybody's waiting on somebody else. They're just like, what are you doing, what are you doing, what are you doing? So, but we'll get it together, but first we're waiting on our college to see what how they're going to grade. And that kind of gives us some guidelines of what we need to do. We did talk about graduation, and thanks to Dr. Cole, he was just like, yes, we're going to graduate. It just may look very different. Plan A was a typical graduation, normal graduation. We were hoping, but now that school's closed throughout May, Plan B was some type of graduation ceremony where children actually still wear their cap and gown, possibly walk up the steps, don't touch anyone, pick up their diploma, some type of video, picture taking. Then at the end, we have a company maybe that could put them all together and make one piece. And we could air it on YouTube, we could air it Channel 99, however we need to. But the children will have some type of graduation. Another thought would be that we take pictures and virtually take pictures and everyone turn them in and we splice them together. So
But
there's
this
several
would,
different
yeah, and this
ideas.
will be done obviously with social distancing in small groups, almost like you sign up for like
Right.
senior pictures or whatever. So no more than 10 at a time. They might have a 30-minute slot. This might take days for us to do this, but we feel like it's worth it to try to pull it off. We've talked about some other neat ideas to kind of celebrate our seniors, maybe even a parade or something. So iHeartRadio, I've heard from them. They're willing to help and support us any way we can. So we don't, there's a lot of unknowns, like in the summer or delaying, and that may be, there may be something we can do in the summer that people that really want to walk, we just don't know that. But we do know that we could do something now for those that we can and try to honor them the best we can. So still working out those details. We're going to hopefully have that either, if not tomorrow, right when we come back from the break. So at least people have something to look forward to. It may not, again, be everybody coming in together at one time. I know that's not great for the kids. They haven't got to see them in the ball fields and different places and have that one final chance to say goodbye. But we'll do what we can to make it special, so for sure.
The principals are really excited.
Yeah.
I wanted to say, maybe is it a possibility where it could be a little bit of both, like the kids that can't come, they think in late summer for a traditional could maybe do
There may be
the
some
walk
opportunity to
up?
do that, yeah.
Because, like you said, I think for these kids, it's super important that they get back together at some point, and for them to wait until, like, say, next year's graduation to kind of have a
Right,
special
that-
something is too long, but maybe they could wait till the end of the summer. Some could come, some may not be able to,
Right.
but
And so, well,
I
we've
think
got
that's
and we want to
part
try
of the
something.
graduation.
Yeah, exactly.
And we're still working out the details of that, but we want
Yeah.
the children to feel like, I want them to celebrate.
Right.
They worked hard.
And if there's an opportunity this summer where we can do something that might just be more traditional, then we'll try
Yeah.
that as well. So.
Well, since we use our own facilities, that
Yeah.
we're not renting a facility that has to be coordinated, maybe.
We just can't, it's hard to plan right now for anything
Oh,
like
no,
in June
yeah,
or
yeah,
whatever,
yeah.
but if we get to that point where things look clear, then we can say, that might be a chance for people to have a more traditional, and what the child wants to do by July or whatever, June, we don't know, but
Yeah.
we'll do our best.
Our EIP teachers are working very diligently with those children who are already struggling, who already have gaps. Our gifted teachers, I'm in constant contact with them. They're working really hard to extend learning, to make meaningful deeper. And I said, this is a perfect time for conceptual learning, because that's what gifted children really do well in. So I'm really excited that they're extending learning that way as well. Oh, someone on the phone?
Yeah.
Oh, hi, Mike.
Hey, I had a quick question about graduation.
Yes, sir.
Have we, I know it's difficult right now, but have we reached out to, the senior class presidents or the senior class as a whole at both schools as well as PTAs and other parents to find out what might suit them best? I mean, I know, again, it's hard to plan right now, like you say, but, I mean, even if we come back in August, if you're going the traditional route or if you're going to college per se, you generally don't start till mid to late August. I know there's some early move-ins, and we've got people going to the military and other things too, but there may be an opportunity to get together in early August, around, I know it's going to be crazy around the time the school starts, but I would love to try to preserve it the traditional ceremony as best we can, but I just want to make sure we get feedback from everybody involved too. And a great idea to us may be something that they just wouldn't work with.
Yeah,
So,
that's a great idea. I think we
We
can.
we had parents in here giving us feedback as well.
But I think the senior class president, I mean, I think there are more
Yeah.
groups that we could reach out to kind of get them ideas. I've had some contact with some through email, and they're pretty excited about some of the ideas we've got so far, but I think we need to continue to work on that outreach for sure.
and all of our teachers that are involved, like you know, Pam Griner.
She came, she was here.
She was here.
Yeah.
Trust me, she was here.
We may have a better idea.
Right.
I don't know who that person might be, but
Here.
Yeah.
I think type of thing might be good. Just, I know with everything going on, it's difficult, but maybe we need to reach out.
We actually had Pam Griner and others from here, so that was, we did think of that part, but the students, I think, is another group to kind of reach out to as well, so.
And so, yeah, I don't want to put words in your mouth. Maybe you haven't completely touched on it yet, but I mean, I'm assuming we're going to do the promotion and retention thing just based on the best knowledge we have and meetings with parents and that sort of thing, like we always have.
Yes.
You've got a third grader that's struggling. I mean, do we really
Yes.
sit down and talk to parents about, maybe a more in-depth conversation about, whether or not you're going to be promoted to the next grade or not, because we don't have, the data from the standardized test, if you will.
So Mike, we gave out our deficiency note. The first deficiency notice went out in November. The second deficiency
Okay.
notice went out in February. So we have those children's names, we have those data, and I have a 27-page rubric for all subject areas. So we have a good rubric to go by, as well as the data that we had before they left us.
Okay.
So yes.
And I guess the only difficult thing, I guess you have this in a traditional setting too, but you've got some teachers and they are going above and beyond and just gangbusters with this online thing, and then some that just aren't. So how do you, I don't know if the level of instruction is obviously not where it is with consistently across the board when we're in class physically, but it's sort of difficult to gauge that too. I mean, I've had some calls. I mean, most of the calls we've got have been wonderful, and we've had good experience here, but there've also been some, like I've reached out to the teacher 10 times, haven't heard back, and just kind of go through that on a case-by-case basis, but we just need to be, aware of the fact that not everyone is having the same experience with this that everybody else is having.
You're absolutely correct, because our teachers are at different levels being tech savvy as well, and their comfort levels are all in different places. But the content coordinators are still providing professional learning to our teachers. So they're on call with them at different grade levels at different times. So the instructional coaches are reaching out to our teachers. And that's the important part of this grading policy, to see what standards are being taught, how they're going to be graded, what activities are you going to count for a grade. So we're there with you on that. And you're right, it's hard to measure their instructional practice when you don't see them. But at least we've tried to streamline of what's going to be graded, how it's going to be taught, and at least of those key pieces for grades.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Mhm.
I would like to say, just overall, I mean, with my two children, what I see out there, just what I've seen in districts that have ended school and 3 weeks later have started e-learning, I feel like we did well getting things going and not letting the students get in a state of complacency and then starting back up something new that might be difficult for them to get into. I mean, we were on it. I even saw a post from somebody that teaches in a neighboring county but has a child in this county, or maybe it was a grandchild, and so they were comparing, what their system was doing versus ours, and really what they said they were impressed. So, I think the overall picture that we're seeing is really positive. I think the teachers really miss being in the classrooms with the kids overall, and I think likewise, the students miss being there too. Maybe younger more than older. I don't know. Anyway,
Well, the high school kids are doing a great job. I was looking at Pam's phone the other day, and I'm just looking at, because it's binging like crazy, and the students are actually taking pictures of their work and sending it as a text, and that's how she's checking and grading. So, I mean, they're being very creative, and they do care. The teachers have worked so hard. Our administrators, our media specialists, they're the ones that came in and tagged every Chromebook with their school, with their the checkout bar, And Christy Jones and Bob Swartz has just been phenomenal in this whole Chromebook checkout process. So
Yeah.
kudos to everybody. It pulled, in a time of uncertainty, it has pulled us as a team closer than ever. And it's really allowed us to tap into everybody's strengths. And the communication is key. So Dr. Cole has been like Johnny on it. Every morning he talks to our principals and gives them an update so everybody feels good. Because even our leaders feel a little leery out there because they're like, well, what are we going to do this? What are we going to do that? So we have to provide that consistency for everybody, not just our children. But communication is key. And middle school and elementary were tasked to communicate with every child or do their best to communicate with every child twice a week. Not just for academics, but for social, emotional as well. How are you doing? Are you getting food? Do you need food brought to you? All those pieces matter, not just academics. And Christy Jones was really good about providing flyers of hotspots. If a child says, I have a Chromebook, but I don't have internet, that doesn't do a child any good. So then we're trying to provide them avenues to go find the hotspots that they need. So something for us to really look at carefully though on down the line if we're really looking at online distance learning and one-to-one.
As far as technology, I spoke with a couple of teachers today that 2 days ago they were able to download certain things, and today they weren't able to download like links to send to their children. Who would they call to?
Let us know. Christy Jones, me,
Okay.
any one of us, any of the content coordinators,
Right.
we'll get in touch with the right person. But if you noticed, I think the internet is just exploding with
Right.
everybody on it too, because it's just like, takes everybody a little bit longer to get on there, so.
Right.
And it's a learning curve for everybody.
Yeah, it's it was not allowed throughout the school system.
Well, we're also monitoring very carefully which pieces that they use. So we told the teachers, you can't just go out there and pick up any link anywhere. It has to match the standard. It has to be something that we're doing. And before you take it for a grade, it has to be systematic throughout the system, because the worst thing we can do is one middle school takes something for a grade and another middle school takes something else for a grade. Or my child doesn't have to do that, but mine does. I mean, we're trying to build that consistency. That's why I meet with them twice a week to say, what are we doing? How's it going? What pieces are we grading? And we're just trying to provide guidance.
And to piggyback on what Ms. Sams was talking about, I've heard anecdotally from a lot of them from other districts. They've been, I think it's been a model, so a lot of just credit goes to our teachers and our instructional people and Ms. Lewis and their group. They've done a great job.
We're going to keep the ball moving.
I think the parents factor into that too.
Yeah.
Some willingly and some.
That's true.
Because it's required. And it's harder with younger kids.
Yeah.
I mean, mine are a little more independent, so I'm not experiencing that. But it takes everybody.
Absolutely. I think it's blurred the lines in a good way. You know, we're all in this together, and as she said, not just from classroom, but school to school,
Yeah.
school to teacher, or parents. So all those are, it's kind of some lines that I think that's a positive silver lining in this.
And kudos to you. I've had a couple of parents have called and just want to let you know. I think a lot of you and that you're doing a great job. And two of the parents was talking with me yesterday. And they said they're going to have a new attitude and a new, totally different respect for teachers
Oh,
that
great.
they've never had before. It is a lot of work, you know? So
Yeah, it is.
I think it's a good thing.
I keep hearing the old math coming back, Lewis. I'm like,
Nobody likes
okay.
the new math.
The
When
kids
you're on
love
the
it.
school board,
Yeah.
you should show me that. I said, I have no idea. You do
The kids love it. Now they're excelling.
You're gonna have to
That's
prove that
good.
to me
I
later.
will. Hey, I had to prove the reading, okay? Y'all didn't give me any breaks on that.
Sorry, no breaks coming. I had a bunch of questions.
Sure.
The first one is you said that elementary school kids, teachers contact them twice a week.
Someone, not
If
necessarily.
they can. I
Yes,
mean, I get
right,
that.
right.
There are going to be difficulties
Right.
with that, but that is the goal, is
Yes.
to contact.
Yes.
What about middle school and high school?
Middle school and elementary, twice a week.
And
High
what about-
school, once a week.
Okay. Because people have been asking me or telling me, you know, anyway.
If they have
Figuring out what the expectation is. or
That is the
I can
expectation.
explain the
Right.
expectation to them.
That was given on March 17th.
In August would be a significant issue because of the heat. If you do graduation, it's hot enough in June. You pull it out there in August, that would be a significant issue. How many? Okay, you were talking about content, new content, 90 minutes. For middle school and high school is 120 minutes. How does that compare to what school was normally before we had this crisis? What was the new information, contact, time, hours, whatever?
Well, it differed
That makes
because that's hard to, normally, okay, we had 90 minutes of reading every day for elementary. We had an hour, 60 minutes for math. But in that 90 minutes, it was not just new learning. It was review of the previous learning. It was adding on. It was going deeper. You had special ed kids. You had EIP children. You had advanced learners. So we hammered it all out, and we looked at what pieces, what would it take to teach that lesson. And we're not teaching all the standards either, Mr. Vidal. We're teaching the high standards for that grade level. We took out the most important pieces that they would need. So it's not the perfect scenario, but it's what is doable at home, because we have to keep in mind our parents at home can't handle a whole lot more than that. They just can't. Because the teacher's up there and they might be recording themselves teaching, or they might give work packets with directions, but the parent's got to be the one that reinforces that learning. So we have to be very mindful of that. That's why we didn't give them any more than that. I think more was being given, and they were getting overloaded. And when they did contact them, they were like, you know, I don't have an idea how to do this. We're not even finished with the last thing that you gave us to do prior to. So it wasn't about the volume of work. It was about the depth of work and checking for understanding before moving on to the next. And that's why we curtailed it that way.
And it's very consistent from what we're seeing across the state. I mean, this is not like we just came up with this number. You know, this is something through a lot of looking and researching in other districts that's kind of consistent with that too.
I just had a lot of questions on it. Only 90 minutes? Yeah,
90 minutes for new learning.
new learning, right.
Right. That's a lot, though.
That's one of the things that I said. I said it's new learning.
Right. But you think about it, I'm going to teach you how to do something, and you don't have any clue, and no one's at home can teach you how to do that either. I mean, we have to keep those scenarios in mind, because, I mean, all of your children, you could help them do it, except the new math. But anyway, I'm just kidding. But
I won't even teach you new math, I'm sorry.
But we have other students out there that don't have the support. So we have to level the playing field, and we have to make it equitable for everybody.
I think that's important to make it equitable, and not only that, that's what concerns me about fall. Because you're going to have to, I guess, lessen the rigor to level the field on some instances, because like you're saying, you can't make it so difficult and challenging that the people at home that don't have support, or they're just looking at it by themselves on their phone or whatever else, that can't pick it up. But then you have the other folks that get it. You know, that's why you have some doing it in 3 days worth of work in one day, and then you have some that are struggling to get through it completely. My concern is the after effect of fall, when fall rolls around and you've missed a whole semester of algebra, you know, and now all of a sudden you're moving to whatever the next core subject is that you had to have that base in order to use it.
Right.
And now you don't have it, and it's going to affect us in the fall as well. You know, we haven't even got to that point yet. So, I mean, I know that's way down the road. We'll worry about that when we get there.
But we're talking about
talking
it already.
about it now.
We really are.
Right.
Because that's why, and I know I said it in a hurry, but your EIP teachers are touching base with those students who are struggling. Then we have our gifted teachers. If I know that Mr. Madala and Mr. Edgy, if I know they're advanced learners, I might only give them that 90 minutes, but I might be contacting their parents and saying, hey, are they finishing early? Do they have it? And they go, oh my gosh, they did that in 20 minutes. They can provide other activities for those children. So it's not like locked in stone, they can't do anything else. Those gifted teachers are also contacting.
Well, to Hank's
advanced
point, I
class
think that's why the
teachers.
teachers are working harder now
Yes.
than they were when they're in the classroom, because they're actually having to do a lot more one-on-one on the side than they were actually in the classroom.
Right.
And, you know, I think it's important for us to continue to reach out like you're doing to make sure that they know that there's other avenues that they're going to be able to take. And, you know, I think it's going to be it's going to be a whole interesting another year, I think, coming up as far as what we're going to do, how we're going to adjust, and, you know, the way things are going to.
We're hoping that we're going to be able to do summer school because we're looking at extra funding to do other additional grades that are falling behind. So, and Dr. Whitehead has already looked at 2 different grants for us for the elementary, because normally we just do 3rd and 5th. possibly we could do K1 and 2 and in our 4th grade. So that would be a blessing if all this goes away and we could do summer school. But if not, we always plan, hope for the best, plan for the worst. So we're already talking about what does that classroom look like in August for those children who, you know, like, what is that? I didn't do that. You know, we don't know if their brothers and sisters are doing their work. I mean, we have to take all those things into counter to say, where are your children? So,
Well, that's why I said it's going to be an interesting tiptoe situation when fall rolls around, that we're going to have to ease into the water rather than just jumping in, you know,
we'll take care of our
wholeheartedly.
kids.
And then I will say on the graduation note, I think we need to, as I talked to Dr. Cole yesterday and the day before, I want to make sure that we get out, to Mike's point as well, to the parents, that we're not giving up on traditional ceremony, because I have a lot of people calling me that that's one of their most important things, is watching your kid walk across the stage and having the kids' social interaction, to Edie's point as well, saying, you know, of celebration afterwards or whatnot. So we could do whatever happens, you know, coming up in May, you know, end of May, beginning of June. But even if we do that, I still want us to hold on to the fact that we may be able to do something in August, to go back to the traditional aspect if it's allowed. Even if we have to go, you know, to do it, if, you know, to your point, John, that outside is extremely hot, maybe they have to do it at Brunswick High. You know, they can take the blue down or whatever.
Especially if there's less numbers, there's going to be a lot
Well,
more.
of course, but I mean, I'm sure that, you know, if I had a senior, I would much rather him walking in another high school than not walk at all. And I'm sure that's what they'll, you know, would want to
Folks at
do.
Glynn Academy don't mind being hot.
But I think that,
They might not worry about the sweat.
So much
Or the
about
gnats.
them being hot is them falling out.
if we have to find, like I said, we just need to think outside the box, and I just want and I've been telling the parents, you know, just give us a little bit, you know, we're not giving up on it yet. I know that, you know, we can do something on the steps and things of that nature, but even if we do that, I still want us to be able to look at doing something later on, regardless of how far down the road it is.
We're going to release something in the morning. Go, I'm sorry, Mike.
Hey, Jerry,
Yes, sir.
that's okay. I don't mean to get bogged down in the details, but it is, you know, important to a lot of us, and well, to everybody for that matter. But, you know, a number of years ago, and it is a huge expense, but a number of years ago we did it on Jekyll. And, you know, I for one would be willing to approve that money, even though it's a big expense, and I know times are tough right now, we're going to get tougher, but to make that special, we know we had a split graduation. We graduated Glynn Academy first and Brunswick High second the same day. And I don't know that Jeff will be willing to work with us at a higher will, but, you know, they're probably going to fill right back up after all this stuff passes. But that might be an option too, and just know that I'd be willing to vote to approve money for them to rent the convention center, even again, if it's a split graduation. It was kind of tough that year, but it'll all be inside. There's plenty of people. So just keep that in mind too, as we move forward.
That's a good idea. Thanks for sharing. But I agree with all of y'all. I mean, we're going to try to do something. We're going to keep the option open, and that's the message for tomorrow already. So
What about Coastal? Their gym, I mean,
it's not needed smaller
It's small.
than our Brunswick High, believe
It's
it or not.
smaller, actually.
Yeah, Brunswick High's way bigger, I think.
Last thing, before you take off, out of zone request, or I can't say the other words, so I always call it out of zone.
Inter-district transfers.
So, are we putting that out there? I mean, are people still, because
That's
people,
no longer in my department.
That's
but-
Valerie, but
But Dr. Whitehead and Sanitra's working on it, and it's still moving forward. I mean,
Okay.
we just met on some,
yeah,
so it's.
nothing's stopping as far as that goes. So if anybody has any questions or concerns, contact Dr. Whitehead, and she'll work with them through that process. I know there's been some curveballs obviously going on with some things.
what are we doing, speaking of contacting up here? I mean, are phones rolling somewhere else, or,
We've got somebody here every day.
but I mean, but the staff may not be here every day, is what I'm saying.
Well, we're here
So-
every day.
Somebody from each department here.
Okay.
And if we have to, or, I mean, we're all, so we pretty much had a skeleton group here every day, or a group of people, and somebody manning the phone. If they have to step out, we'll roll it to one of our phones back in the back. So
Okay.
we're available.
Just not next week, right?
Just not next week. We are
It's spring break.
spring break.
And you need a break.
It'll give us a chance to catch up a little bit. All
where are
right.
you gonna go?
Huh? I'm
Stay
gonna
home.
redo my bathrooms.
Thank you, Ms. Lewis.
Yes. Thank you.
Tell Boudreaux to come on down.
Wake up,
Al's
Al.
like, slap himself to wake him up. Al, we're going to jump into the facilities update. I don't think it's going to take terribly long. A lot of things are well on their way and doing well. So I'll turn it over to you for. They were. So we'll start with Glynn Academy Science Building, Al.
Well, this is going to be a short one because I just found out within the last 30 minutes that both projects are shutting down tomorrow due to the governor's shelter in place.
Okay.
I think the science building will probably recover more quickly because they have a lot of materials on site.
Because I was just over there today. They're just working away.
Yeah, it was going great. Altama was in great shape. I'd love to show the picture.
I've got that. Yeah, hold on.
For the heck of it, but both have notified me within the last, since 5 o'clock, that they're stopping all work until the governor.
But it only
Deems
it's only 2 weeks, right? The governor's call right
Well,
now.
the problem at Altama is going to be that it's the material production that has stopped.
It's not that they can't keep working, right?
Well, but the labor's starting to follow the governor's recommendation as well. So with Altama, we're going to have to wait for material production to start again and then for labor to get back in the game. Science building, they have a lot of materials on site. They have all their flooring, and that's the big job that's going on now is mainly flooring. So hopefully we'll get that done a little bit quicker. And it's a shame because Altama was
Rocking along.
really, really
I haven't seen the order by the governor, but from what I've seen from other states, construction has not been a part of any restrictions. So it's interesting hearing that, but maybe it's the labor and other
They're
issues
both
that are going.
interpreting it that way.
That's what I figured.
Is construction is not essential, so they're going to close down until at least the 13th.
When you're about to move.
It does, but
Which right now is only 6 work days,
yes,
Right now.
but
it could change.
Yeah. Like
I
I
still
say,
can't find it. I don't know.
I haven't seen
I
it.
just looked it up again.
I haven't seen it, but both contractors have a heads up on it, and they're going
You
to
did say it
follow his
yesterday, isn't it?
lead.
He said
Okay.
it, but I can't.
I
Only
didn't-
executive
I didn't
order.
see it on
The
there.
only other items we had for Glynn Academy were the additional parking, which is, there's nothing new to report on that. GAP addition, we talked about that last month. Obviously, we're not going to start to the summer anyway, so there's nothing really to report on that one. Anything on the athletic fields, Al, on?
Right now, that's still on schedule to start May 1st and be complete by August 1st. Right now, that's still on schedule.
And I showed you Altama. It does look, this is a picture, if you hadn't seen it, of a drone photo of Altama. Looks great.
Yeah. And at
Hopefully,
this stage-
we did have a little bit of padding for that finishing before the end of the year. We were projected probably March of next year, right? I think.
Yeah.
So we've got a couple of months to play with, probably, if they don't get, as long as it doesn't take too long. But we'll just play it by ear at this point.
Wait and see. I mean, on the left there, you see all the pre-stressed concrete slabs that go over the mezzanine areas. I mean, they have some material, but their labor is going to be sent home. So I'm more concerned there than I am with the science building. But and just an update on what my department have been doing during the COVID is when the kids got sent home, we had a lot of spring break projects in the queue, and we just bumped those up, and we've gotten a lot of work done in the last couple of weeks. If we're allowed to come back on the 13th, we're just going to jump into our summer mode. We have our custodial supplies on the way, and we're just going to treat it like summer is starting. Just in case there's a late summer school, maybe we'll be cleaned up and ready to go for a late summer school. Big concern I have now is keeping our bus drivers engaged. Summertime, they stay fairly busy with summer school transportation. I'm kind of hoping we can have some summer school so we can get them back in the fold and make sure we have drivers for the fall. So that's kind of what we're looking at with that. But we have plenty to do. We never run out of things to do as long as we can go to work.
The vestibule working. Go ahead, Mike. Go ahead.
No, that's okay. I just want to make a quick statement. This goes without saying, I know. Just please pass along to your folks our appreciation. I mean, I talked to a number of maintenance guys just because I know, a Carolina to personally, and, you know, every time we close, they're still getting after it. You know, I mean, if it's a hurricane or if it's this, I mean, they're always there. They're kind of treated as a separate group, and we do appreciate all they have to do. And we understand that they're a different group, and they're sort of held to a different standard when it comes to, you know, breaks and time off and that sort of thing. We appreciate all they're doing for sure.
Thank you. I'll pass that on. And,
Thank you.
there was one other thing.
Vestibule, I was going to ask you.
The vestibules, we had the same problem there. We were scheduled to do all 10 vestibules over spring break. It looks like they only have material for 3. And right now, they're still coming on the 7th, which is next Tuesday. We'll see if that happens or not. I don't know.
What about security for Altama when nobody's out there?
I was just thinking the same thing. So.
Because I was thinking
We don't carry security.
Hmm?
We don't have security.
What about the SROs? I
You
mean,
mean the new Altama?
The new
Mhm.
Altama.
I mean,
Do we need to put a chain over the drive or anything like that?
They want to carry those big concrete pylons.
yeah, there's not much out there they can take, but I'll talk to
I'm
McDonald.
not so much
about it.
worried about somebody coming out there stealing as I worry about kids going out there and just vandalizing. Or people
Yeah,
just-
well, we don't have a plan right now to deal with that.
And everything here at the science building is secure, I'm assuming. I mean,
Yeah, they've got a
locking,
fence around that
locking
already,
fence in,
Yeah,
so-
they can lock up the science building. That's easy. And they've got to still have a perimeter fence around that, but I'll
Those
talk
in
to
Miami, it would be
Chief.
tagged, I'm just telling you.
Yeah.
We could
Prime
use a wall
territory.
of buses
Totally
for the
different
bus
territory.
drivers.
Our next item was the Center for the Arts. There obviously a lot's going on with the college and us as well. We haven't heard anything for the IGA, nothing official. Still in contact with Dr. Johnston and hoping to get that soon and, to continue. I don't know what her economics looks like in the future. And so we're just sort of in a holding pattern with that for now. The next item was the East Bloss 4. We present this for a while now. There's no changes to it. We still have the list. And so I guess for our consideration would be to still vote on this slate on Tuesday when we come back as a proposed action item. Things can change, certainly economics can change, but at least we're ready and we could start working on the language of a bond in May, just staying with our timeline. Again, this has been an awful, obviously, thing going on, and the economics look not so great at the moment, but we don't know. I mean, something could turn around real quickly, and we may have a quick rebound. So I think it would be prudent to just continue to go forward. We have still a lot of time to consider how that might look in the future, but for now, it would be my thoughts that we just go through and vote on this is still like we had planned to do on Tuesday, just at least something to have that we're working toward and start working with potentially the bond attorney in May so that if everything goes according like we want to, maybe in June we could consider doing that. So I don't want to get behind on things just because of what's going on. None of us could have predicted what we're doing right now, but I don't think any of us can predict the positive things that might be coming hopefully down the road in the future. So if you have any questions about that or thoughts, you can certainly share that. But that's just my thoughts, is that Tuesday we'll still continue to move forward with this list as it is now. Obviously we can modify it, but it's easy to pull back, but once we turn off that, I think it'll be harder to do that. So any questions or concerns about that? But again, we would consider that for Tuesday. This is nothing new. It's the same list we've had for the last probably for the last several months, but we just added more details to it. The next item we had was the GOOD report. As Ms. Preston alluded to earlier, this is kind of a 1 month behind, so it doesn't look bad right now. We had receipts of $1,828,802. This was $128,802 over what we budgeted, which is $1.7 million, which is nice. We'll take it because it's probably not going to be in the positive for, I would assume, a while. But we, as Dr. Salmon also alluded to, and he's not here obviously, that the virus is going to have an impact on this. We know that. We just know obviously with all the tourism that our area relies on, that's definitely changed a lot. The final payment for Burroughs Millette contractor was made in March, so that project will move up to the completed list next month. And finally, Altama and the Science Building are both on schedule. That was before he wrote this
30 minutes ago.
about an hour ago, and progressing well. So for right this minute, it was good while it lasted. Like a lot of things, things are changing very fast, but that was our report for the good report as of now. The last item I think Al wanted to present was a re-roofing proposal for the PE re-roof. So Al, I'll let you present those bids if you'd like.
We went out for proposals to re-roof we still call it the new gym, but the existing gym at Glynn Academy. As you can see, bone dry roofing was the lowest cost, highest rated proposer at $372,500. Of that, I've made state application. The state's going to pay $128,000 of that. So that would be bone dry's contract price, but the net price will be $128,000 less than
$50 difference.
$450.
that. $450.
Four.
It was close.
Very close.
It was close. And we've worked with all these roofers before, and any of them would be okay. It's just that I had a hard time not going with the lowest cost.
Yeah.
Oh, he's also got a 10 in the local contractor, so that's always a good deal.
Yeah. That is a good sign.
Keep it homegrown.
So that'll be on for the
Tuesday for your
14th.
consideration for that one. Any other questions or for Mr. Boudreau before we release him? All right, Mr. Boudreau, thank you very much.
Wish I had better news.
Yeah, me too. All right, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
Mr. Edgy, Chairman Edgy, that's all of our items for information and proposed action items, so I'll turn it over back to you.
All righty, well, I guess I'll take a motion to go into executive session.
So moved.
For what?
We just have
Personnel,
personnel,
that's
I
all I have.
believe, no land
Land.
updates, and no legal. So just,
Land.
you want to talk land?
Yes.
Land, so okay, land and personnel. All right, so Ms. Bobbitt, can I get a second?
Same.
Second by Mr. Madalla. All those in favor? It's unanimous. Assuming you raised your hand, Mike?
I did.
Okay. All righty.
What's the time is 6:11. They're going to turn off all the cameras and everything, so.